Hello and welcome to another episode of the Barnsley StartUp MeetUp. Today with me I've got Rebecca Ruddock, who is just finished up, actually you just handed in your thesis on for your PhD on female entrepreneurs and particularly female behaviours online. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's your talk for the July Barnsley StartUp MeetUp as well. You're actually an entrepreneur in your own right as well, though, aren't you? So could you just give me a little bit of a background about who you are and like how you got into doing your PhD?
Yeah, sure. So I started my own business 2014. So started off kind of doing all things digital marketing. Gradually over time narrowed down my niche and specialised in social media marketing. And for the kind of maybe the second kind of half of my business, the later years of it, I ended up just naturally working with a lot of female entrepreneurs, and like witnessing the challenges that they were facing on social media. I started doing a lot more kind of training and coaching of women entrepreneurs. So rather than doing the social media for them, because a lot of them, they're trying to run the businesses themselves. They've not got big budgets to pay someone to do it for them as much as they would love to. So I was, trying to empower them to be able to do it themselves. But yeah, very much kind of saw the challenges that they were then encountering in that process. So that kind of inspired me to start looking at it from a different angle and going down the research path and trying to learn more and really unpack like what's going on for women entrepreneurs on social media. And so I went back to university and did my master's and kind of started exploring these ideas through like my dissertation and things like that, and then decided to do a PhD in the subject. So that's what I've been doing for the past kind of 3.5 years. Like you say, I've just handed in my thesis.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So yeah.
And have you, through that journey, have you found any kind of, has there been anything that's really surprised you? Is there anything that stood out where you had a preconceived idea about what was going on and that just completely got blown out of the water?
There's probably many moments like that. The first thing that has just come to my mind is the way that the women, particularly in social media spaces, are pigeonholed as women entrepreneurs. And I do think there's a place for talking about women entrepreneurs, female founders, and it's important that we do so. But from my like interviews with women entrepreneurs and also like my work with them one-on-one, a lot of them say like they just want to be recognised as entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Men don't have to put the male part in front of the word. They're just an entrepreneur. So I did a small research project back when I was doing my master's, looking at kind of gendered hashtags and all of the hashtags around women's entrepreneurship. So hashtag mums in business, women in business, boss babe. It was a bit really controversial one.
Yeah.
People were saying they hated using something like boss babe. It really didn't sit comfortably, and it's not how they identify themselves,
absolutely.
but it's kind of, they felt like they had to because it's another way to be visible online, to kind of use these hashtags. So we're kind of, and obviously I've experienced that myself as well as a female entrepreneur. You kind of almost pushed into having to always talk about your gender or talk about the fact that you're a mum in business. And some, I've spoken to lots of women who find that empowering, but I've also spoken to lots of women who, really it doesn't sit comfortably, and there's this tension for them around what they need to do to get seen, and how they feel they have to present themselves, but also how they'd prefer to present themselves. So that's a big one.
Yeah. Okay. So you can be an avatar online, right? Mm-hmm. And so was it quite a common thread that that people don't immediately come out with that they're female if you're not meeting them in person? Does that make sense? Is that like I don't know how I'm putting the question forward really, but it's like not disingenuous as such, but fundamentally leading with a kind of avatar as opposed to who they are themselves.
Yeah, in a way, I wouldn't say they kind of hide their gender. And especially on social media, like that's really difficult because there's such an expectation to be personally visible. So what came up a lot was the pressure to post selfies or personal content is how they often described it. So themselves on video or photos of themselves. And we know that kind of content is more visible on social media. It does better.
Yeah.
And you can go into like people like to see people and connect with other people, but it's also because a big part of my research is looking at algorithms, and it's what the algorithms kind of prioritize as well. So there's this pressure to show your face or, to show up in a way that is uncomfortable for a lot of people. A lot of people don't want to put themselves out there in that such a highly visible way. And for a lot of the women entrepreneurs that I spoke with, they wanted to lead with their expertise. And so going back to, what you said a moment ago, like they want to talk about their business, their strong expertise in their field. And actually they find that it's much harder to be seen that way. So algorithms and other users don't kind of engage in the same way when you're leading with that kind of content. But when you put in something frivolous on, like a fun selfie or behind the scenes kind of thing, which is, it's great content in a way, but it's really they kind of would prefer that to be the icing on the cake, and they want the real substance to come from their own expertise. It's quite
superficial, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right? And so, and like you say, like anyone would, you want to be seen for the benefits that you bring, not for how you look or anything like that.
Yeah, and that's not unique just to women. Men will be facing that same challenge as well. But what I have found with women entrepreneurs is that they also quite often, obviously, I'm trying not to generalise too much, but in a number of instances, people were telling me about how they were kind of, as soon as they did lead with that expertise, they became like targets for criticism. Yeah. And often, so LinkedIn was a big one where this happens a lot, and men jumping on their posts and telling them how they're wrong.
Yeah.
And actually, correcting them and giving their point of view. So, and I think that is a gendered thing as well. Again, I'm sure it does happen to men, but I think it happens more so to women.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that it's much less socially accepted for certainly men to criticise other men, unless it's like a outright blatant clickbait type sort of situation where, you kind of cynically, I feel like there's some people out there that are actively putting forward a deeply unattractive viewpoint simply to get engagement. But outside of that, I very rarely see people like wildly disagree with content from men as opposed to content from women, where again, it starts to become quite personal as well. It's not about like kind of the content that they've put out. It's more about how they look or what they're doing, rather than actually the benefit that they bring, or like the content, the subject that they're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is not unique to social media. There's a well-documented authority gap, is how it tends to be referred to, where women are kind of questioned more. Their credibility is questioned, their expertise is questioned, and that's, a historic phenomena that crosses, lots of different domains, but we're certainly seeing that, transferring onto or being present on social media.
So was your focus specifically social media, or was it just wider than that?
So my PhD focused specifically on social media.
Right.
Because obviously that's vast. So that in itself was kind of a big enough subject to try and tackle. But I'm now thinking about, how this the kind of my findings might help us understand what's happening in other areas. Obviously, I'm particularly interested in digital platforms and algorithms and how they kind of reinforce biases and inequalities that exist offline and in society often get reinforced and reinscribed in digital platforms, and algorithms play a big role in that. So I'm interested as well at looking at things like marketplaces, so Etsy, Amazon and things like that, and you know, are there any similarities in kind of how women entrepreneurs think and feel about how their content's treated by the algorithms, what labour are they having to put in to be visible on those platforms, and maybe are there any kind of gendered elements to that as well. But that's perhaps something I'll look at in the future, but I think a lot of these, a lot of my findings do shed light on kind of the broader experiences of women entrepreneurs.
So in terms of social media, is that like kind of the main platforms, or were you looking at things like Discord and like actual kind of voice chat rooms and things like that, or was it more just kind of Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, or X, and things like that?
Yeah, so I was entirely led by my participants on that. I let them talk to me about what they wanted to talk to me about, and talk to me about the platforms that they were using. And predominantly they were using Instagram, Facebook, although less so, sometimes LinkedIn, some talked about TikTok. So those were the main ones.
I was proper showing my age then. I went straight for like old school
Twitter.
platforms.
Yeah, so it was those kind of the dominant social media platforms.
Right.
Some talked to me a little bit about things like Discord, not a lot, because they just weren't really engaging in those spaces. There was perhaps one or two that were for various reasons. But
really, it's the reason for the question was more around because I game quite a lot, and my kids are now getting into gaming and things like that. And obviously, one of the ways that they communicate with their friends whilst they're playing online, not necessarily all on the same game, but they use. My eldest is asking me about Discord and stuff like that, and I know that there's sort of issues with. Certainly online gaming for women, where they'll, and you know, you're pretty much anonymous until you start to speak, and then as soon as you start to speak, then obviously, you know, there's quite a swing in attitude, really, amongst everyone else that's then on the chat group. And I was just wondering if that was something that had come up in your research. It's
not come up in my research, no, but I have read quite a bit and seen, you know, various like videos of people's experience in terms of that, and how like as soon as other players realise that they're a woman, it can be quite vicious, like harassment that they get, like get off the game and but in much worse language than that.
Absolutely. And then also things like coming back to then pigeonholing people, experience and expertise and talent, then, you know, let's say you play in Final Fantasy or World of Warcraft or something like that, and you've got a role in the team, but then as soon as they find out that you're a girl or you're a woman, should I say, then you kind of moved off onto like a caregiving role or something like that, right? And it's or marginalised effectively as far as the role, the main roles within the team are concerned, and that's entirely just because the realisation that you're a woman, and I find it really interesting. But then also how can that then be addressed, right? Because as a parent, I've got two boys. You know, I'm invested in making sure that they are as much an advocate for themselves as they are for everyone else in the world, right? And how do I overcome that kind of social misogyny that still exists?
Yeah, and I don't have an answer to that. I wish that I did. Hopefully we are moving in the right direction, but I think a lot of things are still strongly ingrained. I think it's worth saying, like, the background to my research and why I feel it's so important is because there's a global gender self-employment gap, and that it applies to this country as well. There's a national gender self-employment gap. So that means that women are less likely to start a business. They are less likely to then go on to employ people. A lot of women, self-employment is a way that they can work part-time or flexible hours because they are still disproportionately bearing the burden of caregiving, whether that's for children or, as a parent, or if it's for like members of the family, elderly parents, that kind of thing. It still falls disproportionately on women to do that. And so women that are then disproportionately in part-time and flexible work. But what that means is that those self-employed women then are earning less money. They also, women are still tend to, it's how to phrase it, not tend to, but women are, again, disproportionately represented in lower paid jobs, even as self-employed. So they might be starting businesses as, I don't know, cleaners, hairdressers, therapists, etc., that are lower paid roles. So all of that put together means that there are fewer women starting businesses for a start, but also self-employment often becomes a route to low income and less future wealth as well. Yeah. So that's why, I'm looking at one specific part of women's entrepreneurship, but that's the bigger picture of why I feel it's so important, because how do we address that gap and encourage more women into self-employment and entrepreneurship? Yes, but high quality kind of entrepreneurship that works for them, but also is a way for them to generate wealth.
The other thing that just popped into my mind then was when you were saying about like kind of there's fewer women who are building businesses and opportunities that go on to scale and become and then employ people and like become a well-paid and affluent kind of lifestyle and things like that, then is part of that as well, like, or at least providing the support network for women to feel like they can do that. Is that also ingrained in the whole perception that you can only do that if you act like a man in a business world, right?
Yeah, I think potentially the norm of entrepreneurship is male. That's why we don't have hashtag man entrepreneur. And the study that I did that I spoke about earlier, I did try and find those male hashtags and male spaces, and then not there. And I did some comparison between like the kind of content that comes up if you just look at non-gendered hashtags, so just hashtag entrepreneur, hashtag business, those kind of ones, versus the gendered like hashtag women in business, mums in business, that kind of thing. And when you look at the non-gendered ones, it is visually and in terms of what they're talking about, more kind of stereotypically male. In terms of like the colours that are used, the words that are used. There's a lot more talk about money. It's not soft and about more those kind of softer skills and relationship building, where a lot on the female side. So those stereotypes really come through if you look at kind of how entrepreneurship's presented or kind of continues to be kind of presented online.
Did you get any response on or any info on if your interviewees ever acted like in a more male way, and how that was then perceived on social media?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the way they want to and often attempt to lead with their expertise and take kind of their gender and other factors of their personal identity, make it more kind of like professional. A lot of them talked about, I want to present professionally, I want to be seen as a professional. I feel that these things are kind of hampering me and forcing me to include this more personal stuff and present in a softer way. I'm not sure if that answers.
No, it does. I think it was more, I guess, similar to the whole superficial conversation, like the superficial sort of expectation that when women put pictures of themselves or videos of themselves online, that it's then kind of construed in a different way by men and by people. It's more than like the reluctance to do that, or at least when women do that and present a much more male approach to social media, where it's like all about, they're talking about money, or they're talking about being quite aggressive in the boardroom, or whatever you want to talk about, like present that, just as an example, then getting a backlash from other women for a start, but then men saying like, that's not how you're supposed to act.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's, I'm not the only person that has kind of researched that exact thing, so I won't take credit for what I'm about to say, but there's kind of a well documented in academic research. It's called like an authenticity bind.
Right.
So there are some scholars called Duffy and Hund who came up with this concept, where women, I think they were looking specifically at influencers, but I've then seen how that applies to the women entrepreneurs in my study, where they're expected and feel pressure to present kind of as authentic in quotation marks, whatever that may mean. The social media's idea of authentic, which actually is highly curated, and vulnerable and open, but not too much so. So if you go too far and you share too much of yourself or your personal life, or too many photos of yourself, or you then receive criticism, and even sometimes more than criticism, like going into harassment. So there's this really fine line and this like balancing act that women have got to do, where they are expected to present professionally, but also to be vulnerable and open and personable at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's a really tricky balance. And again, I don't think that's just unique to social media. I think that comes from the offline world.
Yeah, society in general,
But so certainly that happens on social media as well.
Okay. With the rise of AI models and LLMs over the past few years, has that affected how your interviewees interacted with social media? And also, I guess as well, this was just an additional bit of a question that I was thinking of, was is there any evidence in the data that shows how AI might reinforce social norms or current social norms in how they promote posts from people?
So ChatGPT kind of exploded onto the scene right in the midst of my interviews. So it began to be discussed more and more with the entrepreneurs I was speaking to, and a lot of them were starting to kind of play around with using it to help them create content or generate content ideas. And I think it's fair to say that that's still the main way entrepreneurs are using it to help support them with their social media. But of course, because AI and LLMs are trained on existing data, they're replicating what's already the dominant trends on social media platforms. So you ask it for content ideas and it's going to give you what's most likely to trend. It's going to reflect back to you what's already popular on social media, and that in turn is going to reinforce these kind of norms and expectations, stereotypes, all of these things are going to be kind of reflected back to us. But I think also it could exacerbate it as well. Because if more and more people kind of turn into AI to help guide them with their content, and rather than just coming up with original ideas and using their own kind of creativity, kind of being guided more by their own kind of creativity and values, and going more with what AI tells them to do, that's going to not just reinforce existing kind of trends and norms, but exacerbate them as well. And I think
it's going to exaggerate them as well.
Yeah, and I think what we've already seen, and it's not just down to AI, but also down to like platform algorithms and the way that platforms are used, is that this kind of standardization of social media.
Yeah.
So it's all about trends now, and what's the latest trend or challenge, and just replicating that. And so you see thousands of videos that are all the same.
Yeah.
Just with somebody's own little spin on it, but they're all basically the same.
And then it becomes about personality
Yeah.
or execution or whatever
Yeah.
else. It's interesting. I was talking to Rachel in my last interview about AI in grant submissions and like kind of using that to write them, or people using that to write them. And it's kind of the same thing in the sense that if you don't have any idea about content to start with and you can't prompt that, then it's going to be word salad. It's just going to be a whole load of words that don't say anything and don't deliver any kind of benefit or insight or anything like that. And then that gets fed back into the system. It's like a closed loop, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's something I'm really interested in. I would do a lot of work with AI, and actually one of my job roles, kind of post PhD, that I've been doing kind of throughout as well, is working with a tech startup who are building a workforce management platform for care homes that's driven by AI, but kind of a very AI friendly business. So we use it a lot in our day-to-day work. And personally, I've spent a lot of time kind of playing around with it, and it is so important, the kind of knowing how to prompt AI, what to look out for, because there's lots and lots of problems.
A hallucination, quite frankly, like all the time.
So all the time. It will just lie to you
constantly.
Lie. So you can't trust anything it says. Yeah. And it is a case of, I'll not swear, rubbish in, rubbish out.
Garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah.
That's the one. To use it to compute.
Yeah, but something I'm really interested in thinking about and perhaps working with people on is how they can make better use of AI, because it is
phenomenally
such a
powerful
great tool.
Yeah.
But I think it's there's a lot of mistakes being made in how it's used, and that means that people are missing opportunities, but also maybe perhaps making costly mistakes. I just think there's a lot to be explored with AI, and we can make better use of it. But also, like, massive need for more awareness of how to get a decent output and what to do with it, and how to avoid a lot of the pitfalls.
Do you think it could be used positively for changing the current landscape for women in business?
Potentially, yeah. I think, it's like when social media came along, it's another tool at our disposal, and it's free to a large extent.
Yeah.
Same as social media. It's kind of the cost is your time. So that's fantastic. I think, I don't think we've kind of, as a society and I don't think we've grasped kind of the full potential, particularly for supporting entrepreneurs and perhaps for addressing inequalities. But I think it's really important to be cautious as well, that we don't. So what happened with social media, and still happens, the dominant kind of discourse around social media and entrepreneurship is, it creates a level playing field. Anyone can be an entrepreneur now and be successful, because all you need is a device, which most of us have a smartphone in our pocket. We can get online, we can get on social media, we can get the word out instantly for free. We can be visible. And so anybody can be successful. And, that's rooted in our economy and kind of capitalism and neoliberalism. But that's not the case, because of all the things we've talked about, structural inequalities are replicated in online environments. So it's not a level playing field. Not everyone can be successful.
It's not magically going to change how people think about themselves and how they put themselves in that position, right? I say it quite frequently, but it's like, unless you can't be it unless you can see it, right? And so the positive role models for women in business are not stereotypical female roles, right? And or at least as we perceive them in society. And so if that's what you've got to aspire to, that's not what a lot of men, let alone women, would want to aspire to. And so there's that kind of barrier to overcome in terms of advocating for a healthier kind of approach, or a healthier role model, really, I guess.
Yeah, and something that is really important to mention actually is that a big part of my project was looking at differences between different women entrepreneurs. So it's not the same for every woman. There are lots of different factors, and in terms of like our position in society. So like I'm a white woman, that makes things somewhat easier for me than like the women of colour that I spoke to. Who were saying things like they have to put in extra effort and time and labour into connecting with other black business owners so that they could kind of form a community and see people that looked like them. So one participant that springs to mind was saying like, I want to go on social media and see people that look like me as well and connect with them and support other black owned businesses and that kind of thing. But I really have to make an effort to get the algorithm to show me that. And then the flip side of that is that she felt that, so that therefore means I'm less visible as well.
Of course.
And then other participants that told me about, like, say, for example, Muslim women who wear full face coverings. So they find it difficult to show up in these kind of selfie-driven ways, or, you know, putting themselves on video because their beliefs around modesty don't
allow them.
Kind of marry up with that. So they have to find other kind of creative ways to get around it, and they've come up with very creative ways of doing that. But they're not going to be rewarded with the same amount of visibility.
Barrier, right? It's another barrier to, exactly like you say, for someone who hasn't had to experience those sorts of challenges. If you've got a phone and you've got internet, you can make a business. That's fine for someone who doesn't have those additional barriers. But then when you start to throw additional things in there, then it's just like it becomes too much, right? Yeah,
and there are countless. Like I could give so many examples, but neurodivergence, caregiving responsibilities, access to financial resources. There are all these different factors, and they all intersect as well. That makes the challenges quite unique to each individual. But proves that it's not a level playing field.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. I could talk to you about this forever, but there is one question that I always have to ask as part of my podcast. I say I have to. It's a self-imposed have to. But that is, Rebecca, what is your ultimate sandwich?
I'm on the spot. I one day want to try a Philly cheesesteak in Philly.
Okay, yeah.
So I'll go with that.
Nice, nice. That's interesting. You're the first person who's gone with like a sandwich that they've not tried yet. Like it's an aspirational sandwich.
Yeah.
It's not. This is like my favorite. That I would like. I would make every day. Like on a desert island, this is the sandwich I would take with me.
Yeah, it's a risk, but it has to be in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
A genuine one.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting that as well. Like there's not many people who go with a sandwich that's abroad. Like I think the only other person is a guy called Ben Hawley, who runs Enterprise in Barnsley, and he was just about to go to New York, and he was going to go with he went with a Katz's Deli pastrami on rye. That was like, it sounded amazing.
Yeah. So but my ambition one day actually is Philadelphia. I don't know why, I just have it in my head it's somewhere I want to go as well, and there's a few reasons. So the sandwich is one of those reasons.
It's an expensive sandwich, that's for sure, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely. Is it to do, like, do you want to see the Liberty Bell, or is it anything to do with that?
I support the Philadelphia Eagles.
Oh, do you?
The NFL team, yeah.
Nice.
And the one of the universities there I would love to work at.
Yeah.
And I think it looks like Just cool
there
place.
we go. I'll tag them in the video, and then we'll
Thanks.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Rebecca, for coming on the podcast. And Rebecca's going to be doing the next Startup Meetup event in July. Then we're going to have a little break for summer, and we'll be back in August with a whole new program to take us into the winter. So keep your eyes out for that. And all that's left to say is thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.